Welcome to Don't Chuck It Up, the podcast that takes the stress out of the college search and the application process. I'm your host, Chuck, your friendly college counselor, and today we are talking about everything athletics and how athletic recruitment works. And I am not an expert in this area. I have a lot of experience, but I decided to bring on an expert. So, welcome to the Don't Chuck It Up show, Reid Meyer. Welcome, Reid.
Hey, Chuck. Thanks so much for having me.
You know, we just got back from the HECA, the Higher Education Consultants Association conference in Chicago. It was great seeing you actually in person. I'm actually glad that we're not doing this recording in person because you are substantially taller than I am, and we would not fit on a camera really well. So it was great seeing you in person. Before we get started, why don't you take a moment and introduce yourself, who you are, and what you do?
Yeah, absolutely. So my name is Reid Meyer. I am the founder of A2A Academy and a member of the Student Athlete Advisors. I've been an independent consultant for, I guess, coming up on 10 years now, and have always focused on working with student athletes. I was a former student athlete myself. I played college baseball at the Division I level. I also played at the junior college level. And I also effectively hung up my cleats before my college years were over. I played 2 years of baseball and realized that it was dictating a lot of my decisions in college, and so I chose to go be a full-time student for a couple of years. And so I empathize a lot with kids trying to make those decisions. And so it's, I don't know, at a certain point it felt natural to come and do this and kind of help other kids suss through that process themselves, because I had to spend so much time sussing through it myself.
I was going to say, both of us have had experiences with struggles in navigating life and figuring out life. And so I think we both hit a point where it's like, okay, it's time for us to turn around and help other people navigate this process. I've worked with a lot of athletes in my time. I am not an athlete. I am just one that likes to be a fan and go to all the games. I was blessed with 2 horrible knees, so I was never going to be an athlete, but you were one. And as you said, we both have been doing this independent college counseling work for about 10 years. And you primarily work with athletes, correct?
Yeah, those are my kids. And I would say, I think a lot of times the sort of the follow-up question I get to that is like, well, which kind of athletes, like D1 or D3 or what? And I feel very fortunate in the way that I do my work. I don't really have to ask that question. I think my sort of impetus for my kids is like, is that something you desire to do? Right?
Yeah.
Because my KPI metric or my success metric is not based on how many kids go Division I or how many kids percentage wise goes to play college sports. It's, are you getting to a college that you're happy in a way that you're happy about it? And for some kids, that's Division I. For some kids, that's Division III. For some kids, that's junior college. For some kids, that's club or intramural or something different. And so helping kids kind of figure that out. I think the athlete population is an interesting one. And for years, we were kind of told like you have to either focus on athletics or focus on academics. And my sort of whole campaign, if you will, is that those things should absolutely be seen in the exact same room and given the exact same amount of effort and time and consideration. So wherever you end up is a place where you're happy, on and off the field.
I couldn't agree with you more. I really do want students to find the best fit for them, athletically, academically, socially, and of course, financially. I know there's a lot of people that try and chase the D1 environment, but there are, as you mentioned, there's a lot of other great opportunities, D2, D3, there's the NAIA, there's club, there's intramural. Like, if you want to be passionate about your sport and continue doing your sport at some level, we can probably help you find a place that will take you at some level, as long as you're willing to be open. I know you and I have had a conversation before of like, whether you need to go the ESPN, route, or if there's another college opportunity out there. So let's dive into this. I think a big concern with parents, and a lot of my listeners are parents and counselors, are when the heck does this whole recruiting thing start? We've heard the rumors that some of the biggest D1 football programs are starting now in 8th grade, and so parents are worried that they have to start that early, or if their kid all of a sudden decides to play college at the end of junior year of high school, are they, as the students say, are they cooked, and can they not find a place to play sports after? So when should families really start thinking about this whole athletic recruiting process?
Yeah, it's a really good question, and I'm gonna give you the super short answer that frustrates everybody when they hear it, which is it depends. But the
Right.
long form answer of that, yeah, But the long form answer to that is I think a lot of people get really hung up on certain timelines. They think about it from a chronological standpoint of if we don't have an offer by June 15 between
Yeah,
sophomore and junior year, when the vast majority of these schools are able to start communicating with kids, then as you said, we're cooked, right? There's no option, there's no nothing. And the reality is that the process, the recruiting process is much more milestone driven, I would argue, than
hmm
it is chronologically driven. And
hmm
different kids develop at different times, different sports have different peaks that they try to reach. And so depending on the sport you're discussing, or depending on even the gender, right? I mean,
right,
female athletes tend to get recruited a lot more earlier than male athletes because physiologically they're developed earlier. And so coaches have a higher level of confidence recruiting that student athlete, feeling like there's not going to be significant change in their body structure, from the time that they're a sophomore in high school to the time that they're a freshman in college. And so there's a lot of kind of pieces that go into this, but I think, to prevent kids or families from just feeling overwhelmed by that concept is that I think when you look at your own athletic background, you want to think about the different milestones you can hit, right? So you think about the easiest one is in school. Are you playing on varsity,
right,
right? The reality is coaches are not really they're gonna appreciate that you reached out. They're probably going to invite you to a camp because that's another $200 in their pocket to go do the camp and whatnot. But if you're not playing at the highest level of, let's say, your high school, coaches are using that as an arbitrary cutoff line, right? In the same way that in baseball or basketball, or whatever it might be, they want you competing in the highest level of club or travel that you can consistently play and contribute on a team, right? You can go sit the bench on a really, really nice team and not get any film and not get any playing time. It's not going to do you a lot of good when coaches are asking you how you play and what you do. But sort of finding that balance of what's the highest level I can play in my sport and still be a contributing factor on the team. These are the different kind of milestones you want to be able to hit. Soccer, for example, right? ECNL, MLS next, like those are kind of the tiers that a lot of these coaches are looking at to begin with. And the reality is, like, it's just because there's so many kids that are playing sports now.
yeah,
At a certain point, you have to create arbitrary cutoffs, right? We think about it in the same way of academics, right? Like in the applications process, there are certain schools where if you want to go to Johns Hopkins, like as much as they say they do or don't, like there's going to be an arbitrary cutoff. If you're submitting your test score, there's probably somewhere in there some level of arbitrary cutoff. We even have
yeah,
it for our
yeah,
athletes. I had a baseball player get told, I think it was a year or two ago, that like, hey, would love to have you here. If you can't hit a 1500 on the SAT, don't reach out to me. I can't do anything for you at the
right.
admissions office. And so there are kind of these arbitrary cutoff moments that help us sort of determine those things. But I think again, when it comes to different kids have different levels of development. And so when you hit those certain milestones, whether it's being, on varsity, whether it's being the starter on your club team, whether it's reaching that ECNL mark, whatever it might be within your own respective sport, that's when your recruiting process really kind of ramps up in that timeline. And based on when that happens, some kids are 6'4" when they're 12 years old. Some kids are 6'4" when they're 20 years old. Like it's just you can't control a lot of those different elements of what go into the process. You can only control the schools that you're reaching out to, and you know that's kind of it. This is
Yeah.
when it comes
Well,
down to it.
and I think another factor, I agree with everything that you said wholeheartedly. Another factor is that I find so many students don't even tell their coaches that they are thinking of playing college. Like they may have had that own self-reflection, like, oh, I'm thinking about doing college. Maybe they've told their buddies. They might have mentioned it to their
Mhm.
parents, but they haven't even told their college or their actual coach of their sport. And I'm like, your coach can help you figure this process out and help you navigate some pieces of this. So you really should be also having a conversation with your coach because they can say, oh, I've had students go through this process before. This is about where it starts or things that happen as well. So they can give you some of that insight. But you're right. Students should be playing at the best they can. Does it mean that you have to be at the state champion team in order to get recruited to a college? No. But again, the more willing you are to be open-minded about the variety of colleges out there, the more options you are going to have. But yeah, if you're going to be on the top level NCAA D1, see them on ESPN team, they're only going to be recruiting the top level kids. I mean, that's just the way it goes down, unfortunately. So
Yeah, 100%.
I want to do a little sidebar. You mentioned those showcases. I get asked a lot. What is your thoughts, opinions, feelings about the various showcases that are out there?
Yeah, so it's funny you bring that up. We actually did. we did about an hour-long presentation on camps and showcases at the IACA conference, but I'm going to give you the 20-second version since we're sidebarring here.
Absolutely.
So camps can be really, really powerful in the same way that like a networking event for adults can be really powerful. You can spend your money and show up and just be there and leave and nothing can happen. Or you can be really purposeful in where you're looking to go, identifying those coaches beforehand, communicating with them, indicating interest, making a point to talk to them when you're at the camp, asking insightful questions, following up with the coach on status. There's two different ways to kind of approach these camps, right? And I would say there's three main buckets. There's kind of these developmental camps that I would say are great for kids that are leading up into that official kind of NCAA communication funnel, right? Leading up to
Right.
junior year.
Right.
Those are no pressure, man. You go, you get feedback from coaches. You don't feel like you have to get recruited at that thing. You just learn. You're interacting with coaches. You're seeing the people that are your age that are out there and kind of seeing how you mock up essentially against them. Those are great. And then when you get into that recruiting window, which is kind of that, we'll say late sophomore year, early junior year through high school, you've got kind of these two different options. You have mass exposure camps and you have targeted camps. Mass exposure camps are usually held by third-party entities.
Mhm.
There's 500 kids there. It's hosted at some neutral party site or whatever it might be, and they're boasting that like 100 colleges and coaches are going to be there. And that's all well and good. I tend to find the quality is more valuable than the quantity on those types of things.
Right.
Usually, those coaches are coming to watch one or two people that they've asked to go to that camp.
Yes, exactly.
Yeah.
They've pre-selected some kids and they've invited them saying, "Hey, I'm going to XYZ camp. I would like to
Mhm.
see you there." And I get nervous when parents, so they go, "Oh, these colleges are going to be there. We should go because that's going to give us exposure to those particular high-level colleges." And I'm just going, "Those colleges might have already thought about who they are planning to talk to. Yeah, you'll get seen, quote unquote, but unless you're a unbelievable rock star that day, you're probably not going to grab their attention." So anyway, keep going.
No, you're absolutely correct. And that's the point that we make, right? Is that, I mean, yes, there's always an outside chance that you're going to go there and blow somebody's mind and all of
Right.
a sudden you're going to have the conversation. Can't ever say that's impossible. It happens. But those coaches are more likely viewing a certain number of kids that they know are going to be there and have planned to be there. And if you happen to be in that vicinity and you happen to blow their mind in the time they're watching those kids, then great. That works out for you.
Yeah.
Otherwise, you just gave that third party entity, I don't know, $500 and stayed there for 2 nights and did whatever you were going to do. What we tend to recommend kids kind of look for are these more targeted camps where colleges are actually hosting their own recruiting ID camps, or they're attending a camp that's nearby and it's them and let's say maybe two other coaches or something like that that are coming to the program. That's those scenarios where, exactly to your point, you're engaging with the coach beforehand, you're building a rapport, you're finding a way to sort of connect and be in front of them at a certain point, and then having a chance to really have a thoughtful kind of conversation or evaluation with that coach to understand where you stand in the process. But that very much, it's a quality over quantity mentality on this for the
Yes.
most part for most kids that are going through this process.
I 100% agree. And I also think you raised a really valuable point, which is students in particular, parents can help students do this, but students need to be reaching out before, during, and after because you are marketing yourself. A lot of students and parents have seen the movies and the shows where the coach just magically shows up at a high school football game and, voila, you have a D1 offer, after the amazing, 99-yard touchdown that you made. Like, that's the movies. Like, let's be real. That happens on a movie or a TV show. If you want to be recruited, you have to get out there and show yourself and say, "Hey, I'm coming to this camp. I'm looking forward to meeting you. Hey, it was great meeting you while I was at this camp. Hey, what's going on with the recruitment process? How can we stay connected?" Like, you have to advocate for yourself. You are marketing yourself because you should be a desired person, a desired athlete. And man, I can't get students to understand this. They're just like, "Yeah, well, they'll find me if they want me." I'm like, "Oh no, that doesn't work that way."
Yeah, I think you nailed on something that is probably the core of what myself and my colleagues try to talk to people about, which is this whole idea of we view college athletics as sort of this reactive recruiting process, and that's what we talk
Yes.
about, right? Exactly to your point. I'm going to go to these showcases that are nearby. I'm going to play really well on my high school team. I know who I am. My parents think I'm great. My teammates think I'm great. My coach thinks I'm great. They'll find me. We'll have these conversations.
Yeah.
The reality is, like, you could be the best person in your area or in your district or even in your state, but there's only so many kids that can get that type of attention from a coach when there's so much going on. It's the same thing of like, I feel like the equivalent that I can get kids to understand is like you post something on Instagram or you post a video on TikTok and go like, this is amazing. Everyone thinks this is funny. This is going to go viral in 2 days. It'll have 1 million views. Like maybe like a very small percentage chance that that happens, but more than likely it's going to rotate in your ecosystem, and that's
Yep.
going to kind of be it. As opposed to if you tagged somebody on that video that you really wanted to see it and said, "Hey, Nutella, I did a really funny video that has your stuff in there. I want to talk to you." That could potentially create an opportunity for you to connect with that individual. It's the same exact thing when it comes to coaches. There's just so much out there. And the
Yeah.
exactly your point, the movies and the shows that we used to watch do not take into consideration the youth sports industrial complex that has grown over the last 10 years into this multi-billion dollar entity. Coaches are getting sensory overload from everywhere. And so the best way for you to separate from that is to, exactly like you said, be proactive in the process, identify a school that's going to be a great fit for you, not only athletically, but in all these other places, to give that coach some confidence you're not just going to transfer after the first year, and
Yes.
connect with them and let them know you're interested. Absolutely.
Yeah. And again, it's got to be an athletic fit as well as an academic fit. I've seen students who've done really well athletically and then academically they've totally tanked, or they didn't end up liking a major, or they didn't like the location of the school. They didn't do their research as to, what winter was like at their particular college, and they went, "Oh man, that sucked." So let's get back to the very basic thing though, is how should people start? This is a very overwhelming process, which is why your job and my job exists, is to help people get coached by us through this process to understand it. But what the heck is like square one? Like, what should students and parents be doing to even start?
Yeah, I think, square one, I find entertaining because it's probably the exact same square one that you have on just the standard consulting sides of things. I think a lot of times we want to, it's like baking a cake, like you can only put certain ingredients in first before others make sense, or else something comes out a little bit wonky. I think a lot of athletic families try to start with, hey, where do I want to go play sports? And
Mm-hmm.
then they try to layer in everything else that goes into the college experience. And that creates a lot of confusion in the process. And I think the reason for that mostly is because most kids at 13, 14 years old, when mom and dad ask this question as the kids going into high school or whatever it is, have really only been exposed to what they see on ESPN. To your point,
Mm-hmm.
they see the top 25 teams. Their reality of college sport is that. That is what
Mm-hmm.
that is. And who wouldn't want that, right? Who wouldn't want 100,000 people cheering for them? Who wouldn't want people storming the court? Who wouldn't want walk off home? Like, of course, that's what we want. And so when you, as a parent, ask the 14-year-old or 13-year-old, hey, where do you want to go? And they tell you Texas and Alabama and Minnesota for hockey, all these different things. Well, then you as the parent go, well, I love my kids so much, I'm going to do everything I possibly can to make that work.
Yeah.
And so now you're putting all of your effort and all of your thoughts into, I'm going to get my kid to these D1 schools that they talked to me about, because at 13 years old, that's all they knew and that's what they said.
Mm-hmm.
And it sort of starts this buzz saw in the household, and the tension starts to rise because that's a really small percentage of kids. But if you
Mm-hmm.
sort of create that as your baseline of success as a family, starting at 13, 14 years old, the pressure's starting to rise at that point.
Mm-hmm.
And maybe you don't get to be 6'4". Maybe you're not throwing 100 miles an hour. Maybe you're not the leading goal scorer on your team. All these sort of things start to stack up. But if that's been your only mentality the whole time, then you're trying to build up to what is most likely for 99% of kids, an unrealistic expectation of what this success is going to look like. And so what we encourage people to do is, hey, don't, that part's going to come. Like if you love your
Right.
sport and you want to play your sport, and your body is going to push you in a position to play that sport, that's going to happen. Like you have to drive that anyway. In the same way that if you love music, you're going to continue to practice, you're going to continue to get better. No
Yep.
one can stick a flute in my hand and say, I'm going to make you practice 1,000 hours and you're going to magically love it and you're going to magically be good at
Mm-hmm.
the flute. Like you can get better, but you can't grow that love. You can't grow, certain natural inclinations. There's just certain things that happen in that process. So instead, let's focus on the other piece, right? Where do we want to be in the world? Exactly like you said. Can we deal with northern cold? Can we deal with southern heat? Do we want to be far from home? Do we want to be close to home? Do we want family to be able to come and visit us? Do we want to be able to study abroad and go see different places whenever we go to school? Do we want to be an engineer? Do we want to be a nurse? Like,
Yep.
what are these factors that go into our college experience that don't have to be figured out at 13 and 14 years old, but should be, started to be thought about so that we can kind of have a smart conversation about it by the time we get a year or two into high school? And then let's take that information, those preferences from that school experience, and let's layer in the athletic component based on, to your point, where does our club coach or our high school coach kind of have us slotted athletically? Where do we desire to go? How is our body developed? How are these different things sort of playing into what our athletic experience is going to allow us to do? And the beautiful thing is, like, it costs nothing to send an email. Like, you're going
Yeah,
to reach out to these coaches, you're going to express that interest. So if you've got Division 1, Division 2, Division 3, NAI, junior college schools all on that list, so long as they are good overall fits, because that's where we started, let's send the email. Let's fill the questionnaire out. Let's follow the people on social. Like, who cares? You're going to get told no a lot in this process of college admission and college athletics. You got to be okay with that. So send those things out, see what the opportunities are. And then based on who responds to you and who starts to sort of pick up on what you're putting down, for lack of a better lack of a better term, now we can start to have some educational conversations about, okay, is this what college sports looks like to you? Is this how you
correct.
interpret that as a successful college sport? And if it is, great, let's pursue this. And if it's not, let's talk about what's missing, and let's have some adult conversations about, you may not be able to do this thing that you desire to do. That's okay. Here are the other options you can explore. You and 99% of the other people that play this sport are in the exact same boat. So let's talk about it. Let's figure out what we need to do. But I think, to the core of it is, basically take athletics out of the equation for as long as you can and have it be a college choice, so that whenever you are talking to these coaches, it's not just, hey, your team is number 2 in Division 2, and so I want to come play for you. It's, hey, you're going to allow me to be a nurse and also be a soccer player. And also, I love Florida. I've got family close by. Like, those are the things that not only make you more confident in that decision, but also makes a coach more confident in you. Because with the
Mhm.
the advent of, there's a little bit of legislation floating around right now that may put a bit of a hold on this. But like the transfer portal, for example, it's so easy to move from school to school that coaches are nervous. Like, if they
Right.
have a kid that comes in and they sense like, oh, I'm just here as a stepping stone, they don't want to use their time, money, energy, scholarship, whatever, to get you there, thinking you're going to step somewhere else. So if you come in with, hey, here are the reasons why athletically, academically, personally, financially, I want to be at this school, that gives a lot more confidence to that coach to lean on you as a recruit than somebody else who's just sent in like, hey, I know I can play basketball here, so let me come. That's not as much of a sell.
Right. I, you made a million awesome points with that, but it's really finding the fit overall. Because when I worked at Iowa State University, and guys would come there for football, I had a lot of football
Mhm.
players, and they never got connected academically or didn't realize the location in the middle of Iowa. I loved the location, but for some of these guys being recruited from major cities in other parts of the country, they weren't used to living in the middle of nowhere, Iowa. So understanding the whole thing. And I think your point about coaches are nervous that you are transferring or using this as a stepping stone. Yes, that can happen, but it doesn't have to. I'm working with students right now who want to do athletics, and we're discovering colleges that they had never heard of because they really were focusing on the super popular D1. So there's a lot of D1 colleges out there that most people don't even pay attention to, that offer great experiences in a different location, different size, but they are not as popular because you don't see them. They're not a part of the SEC, the Big 10, or the Big 12, so you don't really see them as much, but they're still great D1 schools. And it just frustrates
Mhm.
me how many students and families just start with, oh, well, this is what we've heard of. I'm like, well, you can have that on the list, but be open-minded to explore different athletic divisions, different locations, and again, find the fit academically so your kid is not dropping out because they can't meet the GPA requirement to play their sport. Like,
Yeah. No, you hit the nail on the head. I think it's the open-mindedness piece, I think, is the part that all of us that are in this business, if there was one thing I wish families would be willing to do, or students would be willing to do, is like, keep that open mind on these places. You don't have to say yes to it. That's perfectly fine. If you decide you want to go to Alabama and be a full-time student and have the very traditional, that's great. Like, that
yeah,
is perfect. But I
yeah,
want you to get there because you are pulled to that experience as something you want to do, and you don't feel pushed into it by external forces
right.
that make you go do it because you didn't go look at these 3 or 4 places that we wanted to have you take a look at. You're absolutely correct on that.
Well, and you and I had a really good heart to heart during the conference of a lot of students and families don't realize that some of these very well known colleges are in teeny tiny itty bitty little towns in the middle of nowhere. And they see the huge stadiums with 70,000, 80,000 people, whatever it is nowadays, and they see the beautiful campuses that really show well on Instagram. But then my families go to visit and they go, there's not even a Target nearby. Like we couldn't even find a Starbucks for 10 miles. Like I'm just going, see, there's more than meets the eye. Like it looks really good on television and looks really good on Instagram, but some of these schools, they're located in itty bitty little teeny tiny towns. So go check them out and make sure you're getting the
You got to
whole
look
picture.
beyond the Goodyear blimp.
Yeah, right. Right. Oh, um, so one thing I know you and I both get asked is about athletic scholarships, because you always
Mhm.
hear about these kids that are getting the quote unquote full ride, and we'll have to unpack that a little. But can students and parents legitimately still find these full ride opportunities? Like, is this even a possibility anymore, especially with all the changes with the NCAA and what's going on with colleges and universities?
Yeah, I mean, the technical true answer is yes, you can find those. I think the extended answer to that is that we all know of, let's call it down in Texas, it's a 40-acre scholarship for UT. You can get that. Absolutely, you can get that. There's 50,000 kids that are at the place, and I think, I don't
Right.
know, 40 of them are getting what that. So statistically, you're looking at a very similar breakdown on a lot of these types of things. And so, yeah, numbers are fun on this kind of stuff, right? So, the average scholarship that you're going to be looking at for college sports at this stage, if you include basketball and football, and this is taking kind of all divisions into consideration that award scholarship, is about $14,000 a year. And so, it's not nothing. Absolutely not nothing.
Right.
But when you think about the money invested on college athletic or on club athletics,
Yep.
leading up to college, which is on average about $10,000 a year per club sport that you're a part of nowadays in the US. That $4,000 delta may or may not be worth all of that
Right.
effort. And the percentage of people that are getting that scholarship is not 100% whenever you go to these different schools. So that is certainly something to consider. If you take out football, that number drops from 14,000 to 8,000. So now you're technically in the
Wow.
red on that kind of, even if you do get a scholarship on those types of things. And so now the distribution of that can be a little bit different in different places. And I'll try as best I can to kind of give the 20-second overview of kind of what this looks like. So we'll start from the bottom up because it gets a little bit more complicated. So NCAA Division III, very easy, no athletic scholarship. Don't award it. They're
Correct.
traditionally private schools that do have great merit aid. And that's
Yeah.
something that I think a lot of families ignore. So Oglethorpe is a great example that I like to use with families
Yeah.
where it's like, yeah, they're not going to give you any athletic aid, but if you come in with a 3.8 weighted GPA, they're going to match your flagship institution's tuition. So all of a sudden, right there,
Right.
you've made that an incredibly affordable option that you didn't consider because in your brain you didn't get athletic money, so it lost value.
And
And
my
so,
my 2 second plug for D3 also is
mhm,
that the athletic scholarships, the athletic scholarships don't happen. The academic scholarships happen, and those are very difficult to take away. So,
mhm,
so D3, you're getting that money as long as you stay above the certain GPA point. You've got that money for your full 4 years, regardless as to do you play your sport for 1 year or 4 years. They don't care.
yep,
So yeah, lots of great opportunities. I love the Oglethorpe example because that is one where if you're a strong academic student, you can go to a private college, play sports, and basically pay in-state public university style tuition for your flagship institution. So great example. So D3, check them out.
absolutely, yeah. And you hit another great point that you beat me to it, which is fantastic because this is the right part to talk about it. But yeah, the where the money is tied, right? It's not tied to a specific coach giving you that opportunity. It's not tied to your play. It's not tied to your ability to continue playing the sport. And there's a lot of kind of like nuanced stipulations that
Right.
go into that in certain places. But I know as somebody who got called by my coach after freshman year that said, "Hey, you're on the team, great. Money's going down. We're dropping you down. We got to make room for somebody." I mean,
Mm,
there are NCAA block certain things, and there's certain things that just happen, as we've kind of seen
right.
examples of across the board. So you're absolutely right. It's way safer money on the academic side when it comes to those types of things. So Division III, from an athletic specific scholarship standpoint, no athletic scholarships in there. Doesn't mean it's a bad option, but the no athletic scholarships. Division II operates on what we call an equivalency scholarship process, which means each sport has a kind of dedicated limit up to which you can fund certain scholarships. So let's say I don't know, I'm throwing a number out, which is not going to be true because it's off the top of my head, but let's say you have 15 scholarships available for a 27-man roster on a baseball team, right? And you can
Mhm.
go up to that point. And so schools are able to parcel out those full scholarships to different players to give you different percentages. And usually there's a minimum there. Usually you have to give a minimum of, like, let's say, I don't know, 25% or whatever it might be to cover books or and different things like that.
Right.
But rarely are you going to see full scholarships at the Division II level, only because all of the sports operate on an equivalency basis, and the coaches are trying to spread that money out as best they can.
Hmm.
Um, this is a really good plug, like we did for the Merit scholarships in Division III. This is a really good plug for Division II and for any division, which is the smarter you are as a student, the better recruit you're going to be because you're a
Yes.
cheaper recruit, right? And
Yes.
I think a lot of kids, and it's the age old tradition of, like, big dum dum in the corner, throw ball hard, make money. Like, it's the trope that we all see on TV or whatever else. But the reality is, like, if you can come in and you can earn merit aid from a school, that they're always going to take that first, and they're going to package it with the athletic money that you have. So if you're a student that can come in and let's say you throw, I'm going to use baseball as an example. Let's say you throw 3 miles an hour slower than some other guy that's over in, West Virginia or whatever it might be, but you're $20,000 a year cheaper than that recruit because you got merit aid. That 3 miles an hour starts to not really make that big of a difference to a coach if he doesn't have to find that extra $20,000 to get you to come onto that team, and he can save that for another kid that may need it financially or may need it, academically or whatever, to offset that team. You make the team better by being a cheaper recruit. And so you can, stronger test scores you have, the stronger GPA you have, the more course rigor you take, the more opportunities you have to tap into merit aid, which lowers your cost as a recruit and makes you a more appealing athlete across the board for literally any college. And I cannot yell that louder. Which that's happened. Anytime I talk to a freshman, they're always like, "What do I need to do?" I'm like, "Make the best grades you possibly can. Like, that's the
Right.
only thing you need to worry about doing, and maybe go find something in the summer that isn't your sport that you can do as, like, a volunteer thing or like an extracurricular thing, and have something else about your personality. Like, that's it. That's what you should focus on."
Well, and again, I don't want students and parents to freak out too much. Like, it doesn't have to be a 4.0. It can be a
Correct.
3.9, a 3.8. Again, depending upon the type of college you are looking at, you and I can help them find places that, okay, if you're a strong GPA, and by strong, I mean above a 3.5, like get above a 3.5, above a
Mhm.
3.75, even better. But like one of my students was able to walk on to the sport for D1 because the student had already committed academically and got a huge
Mhm.
academic scholarship. And I bet the coach looked at that student and went, well, you're going to cost me like $3,000 because you already have all this academic money and you're a decent player and you probably won't do a full play for a year or two, but like cheap add-on. Like, okay, yeah. And the student was like, hey, I'm playing D1 sports, and it was great. But that student was recruited academically primarily by the university and then was athletically and again as a walk-on. And I don't know if they're actually going to be a super contributing person probably until junior year of college. But hey, the student's happy, they're involved, and they get to have the academic fit and the athletic fit.
Yeah, and I think you indicated something great there of, like, it's the icing on the cake, right? They're going to that school because they want to go to that school. They put themselves in a position to succeed there. And now, hey, let me go have this other experience and let me
Right,
do that for whatever extent I want to do that for, which I think is fantastic. So
right.
yeah, that's the Division II model. And the Division I is where it gets a little bit weird. And they've
Mhm.
got, as of a couple of years ago, they have a new system in place, which is essentially they used to have what was called headcount sports and equivalency sports. So the equivalency sports was the exact same as Division II.
Mhm.
And then headcount sports were the six sports where you could get this all or nothing scholarship. And that's a lot of what we think about when we think about athletic scholarships. It's they're paying tuition, board, fees, all that good stuff. That's what that was. That has since gone away. And we now have a new system where, under the NIL or name, image, and likeness kind of ecosystem, these schools have a pool of money that they are able to fund up to, which is roughly $20.2 million right now, I think. And every year it goes up a little bit for inflation, that they can pull together as an athletics department and then distribute to athletic departments or specific sports however they see fit. And so when that change enacted, it eliminated the Title IX protections for women's sports. It took away a lot of the sort of minimum buildups on scholarships for Olympic sports. And so what you're finding is the vast majority of that money is being sort of hyper focused into the revenue generating sports, which is
Mhm.
football, men's basketball, and then a little bit in women's basketball. And then occasionally you'll get some bump up sports, like baseball has a couple of programs that are,
Yep.
really emphasis on that. Oklahoma softball. Like there's some,
Right.
there's some one-offs in those different areas where you could have some more influence on those types of things. But that's how that money is distributed. And so unfortunately, at Division 1, it becomes much more dependent on the types of sports that you're competing in and the types of funding that that school now has available to pool for your specific sport. So, for example, the University of Northern Colorado, I went and visited there and had a chance to talk with some of the coaches there. Um, and they indicated to me that at the University of Northern Colorado, by way of how they have distributed those scholarships, they have exactly one scholarship to give away every year. That's it. The rest of it goes predominantly to volleyball and football. That's what they want to try and ramp up because that's what they think is going to ultimately, and basketball, that's what they think is ultimately going to help the athletics department gain some notoriety, get some attention, out in the world. Because as we kind of allude to a lot of times in the athletic space, like athletics is the front porch of the university, and they want the way to make your front porch look the prettiest, the fastest, is making an NCAA tournament or going far in football. Those are the
Yep.
two ways to do it. So if that's where you're going to put your money in order to try and get your return on investment, that's a lot of times where schools are going to invest that cash. And so the distribution of that money really is dependent on the sport that you're playing and kind of what the emphasis is in the school that you want to attend, unfortunately. So there's not really a minimum that exists. There are kids that are going to get full rides and they can supplement that with name, image, and likeness money, but it is a teeny fraction.
Yeah. It's really small. And the other thing that has come up with all these changes is now a lot of colleges have been eliminating some sports that are not going to be as visual or revenue generating or harder to staff. So that's been a bit of the shakeup at the colleges as well, is that we're seeing some places eliminate programs, and which is sad for me. And then I have to help students transfer, or they have to get into the transfer portal if they're a varsity athlete. So it's just like, yeah, hold on to your hat here, and I'm sure you're loving every week, Reid, of getting new information and new updates and what happens. And our best part about our job is that we are never done because we constantly have to learn what the heck is happening next year.
I've learned how to very effectively scan through different proposal legislations and bills in the last year and a half or so of my career.
Yeah, I've heard. I do all the higher ed updates and everything, and it's just like, oh my gosh, so many things to keep in my brain. And, there's only 2,700 four-year colleges and a couple additional almost 2,000 two-year colleges that we have to constantly have our finger on the pulse of. But yay, we love doing this and we love helping students and families. So the big question is, what should parents be doing in this process? So the student is really the one that
Mhm.
is deciding, hey, I want to be an athlete. Hey, I want to get recruited. And they're going to have to do the reach outs and the social media connections and going to all these things. Up until now, the parents have been in the stands cheering, bringing the oranges and the Kool-Aid after practice to keep their kid hydrated and driving them through Chipotle to make sure that they have food. But when they get into this recruitment process, what is the role of the parent? What happens here?
Yeah, it's a great question, and I think to kind of sort of be the umbrella, if you will, to kind of the points that I like to make with parents on this is the Vanderbilt head baseball coach, guy named Tim Corbin, has a quote that he loves to use when he's talking to athletes, when he's talking to parents, whatever. And his quote is, "You want your kids to love you more by relying on you less." And to me, that is the theme of athletic recruitment. I think that is how this whole thing wins, because what ends up happening is, again, parent love is something unique, right? It's biologically wired. You do irrational things, and your brain conceptualizes it or rationalizes it because it's for the sake of your child. And I empathize with that, or rather sympathize with that wholeheartedly. That being said, you can absolutely smother something to death if you are sort of too in the weeds on it. Then
Mhm.
I think what a lot of parents think that they're doing, I think a lot of parents see it as like, well, I'm helping my kid make sure they're tapping into all the different opportunities, or making the most of this very sort of finite window in which you can do certain things. Totally understand that. The reality is, however much you care as a parent is completely separate and non impactful to how much your kid cares about playing that sport or being a part of that environment. And that's the part that's going to make this win or not win. At the end of the day, if the kid wants to do this and the kid wants to put the effort in and the kid wants to connect with people, they need to learn how to do that. And that's what needs to drive the thing. In the same way that you have parents come in and say, here's the list of 50 schools that I think my kid should go to. because they themselves are living, whether it's they're living
Yeah.
vicariously through their kid or they've done all the research beforehand and they know this is what's going to fit. It's going to da 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 da. Like it's the wheel, it's the flywheel that continues to go. And so the more parents can just be mom and dad and not be coach or not be referee or not be agent or not be anything else. Because I'm gonna tell you what, I've yet to meet a coach in the world. I've been to, I don't know, I think I crested like 300 school visits or something this past week or whatever. I've yet to meet a coach when I go on those visits that says like, I would really love to hear from mom and dad. I'd love to hear what they think about their kid because they all know what it is. You love your kid unconditionally. He's the best on the team. He does X, Y, Z. He may not throw the fastest, but he's not great, cool, awesome. My job as a coach is to evaluate kids and make decisions. I cannot do that based on parent love. I would have a bajillion kids on my team, and that would be that. So, like, you need to back off a little bit. And to me, the focus should be like, I think heightened communication and a heightened understanding that your support of that kid unconditionally is going to do them so much more than them feeling like they have to perform for you every time they go
Yeah.
out and they compete in these different things. So, like, check in with your kids, ask them, hey, is this still something you're enjoying? Hey, is this something you want to keep doing? Hey, what's the new goal for college, or what's the new goal for what you want to, is that still Division 1 ESPN, like you told me when you were 13 years old, or is that
Mhm.
now playing club and going to a big school? Is that Division 3? Like, what does that look like for you? Let kids change their minds and then let kids go play sport and see what happens. Like, you cannot go out there and throw the ball. You cannot shoot the basket. You cannot score goal. Like, you can only watch and support. And the only thing you're going to do by getting more involved is make your kid not want to invite you to their college games if they do in fact make it somewhere. That's really the only thing you can do.
Well said. And parents, please, please, please do not reach out to the coaches on behalf of your kid. That happens when I was in admissions and parents would reach out to me on behalf of their kid. This is your kid's process. This is your child moving from a state of dependence on you to a state of independence. And part of this is the learning process of learning how to communicate with coaches, with admissions, with other college level staff. You can help them, format the email or make sure that things are appropriate. You should remind them to be checking their email and checking their DMs on Instagram or X or whatever platform they're using, Recruit Me or whatever it is. But you should not, and coaches can smell that. Coaches can tell when it's this email sounds like it's a parent, or parents will just literally say, "Hi, I'm the parent of so and so." It's like, no, that doesn't give you level up. That probably actually gives you a level down. What do you think, Reid?
100% gives you a level down. Yeah, I mean, it tells coaches two things really quickly. It tells them, one, you don't have a kid. They now perceive this kid is not mature enough to manage their own communication, which
Facts.
is a bummer. And two, it gives the indication to a coach of, okay, if you're emailing me now, what does my 4 years look like? Like, what if I don't
Right.
play Johnny one
Right.
day because I've got a
Oh,
kid that I need to? Am I going to be getting hit up by this person asking why and explaining my like? They don't need any of that. There's
yeah.
plenty of kids out there with parents who won't email them, so they're going to go find those people that are right in that same athletic wheelhouse. 100%.
Yeah. When I was in admissions, I definitely put notes in files of parents that were a little much. Because that would be a parent that we were going to have for 4 years if that kid was admitted. So yeah, we definitely did that. It's always best to stay in the background a little bit and say please and thank you and all those types of things. But yeah, don't do the
Yeah,
recruitment for your kid.
100%.
Well, we've been talking with Reid from A2A Academy. Reid, I really appreciate you being here on the show. I wanted to give you some time to share your words of wisdom with students and parents who are somewhat in this process, whether they might be starting it or halfway through it, wherever they may be. But what are some words of wisdom that you would like to share?
Yeah, I think I'm gonna go a little cerebral with you on this one. I've got a professor that I worked with that was a professor of mine at UT, a guy named Matt Bowers, and by this point he probably thinks I'm obsessed with him because I like to quote stuff he says. But one of the things that he talked to us about in a sport development class was this idea that we in the US especially, we perceive sports as good. That's usually how we connotate it. Sports are good all the time. And the reality is that sports just are. They cannot be good. They can't inherently be good, inherently be bad, inherently be toxic, whatever it might be. But we always see sports as a positive because it's something we do because we love. We play it because we want to enter, it's dad and their son playing baseball in the backyard. It's mom and daughter kicking the soccer ball around. It's core memories of going and traveling to these places together and having friends. And that's all fantastic. But that's because we make it that way. You have to put
Right.
effort into doing that. And you have to continue to tell yourself, this is fun. I enjoy this. I want to be doing this. And what we've kind of done, unfortunately, on the college recruiting side is that we've sort of started to shift that mentality, or we've started to shift that connotation of sport into being something that's a lot more pressure filled. It can be a lot more, for lack of a better term, toxic. It can be a lot. It can have a lot more kind of negativity to it in that process. But we, as Americans, kind of have this mentality of like, well, that can't be because sports are good.
Mm-hmm.
And something that I think families, kids, parents need to remember throughout this whole process is sports just are, and you have to put effort in at any given point to make it good. So if you don't expect the sport to do it for you, don't expect because you paid your $2,000 to go play baseball or basketball or whatever, that it's going to be a good time. Like you have to choose when we go on this trip. I'm not going to base this off of did we win or lose our 12U tournament, or did this coach come and talk to my kid or a different kid? It's did we go create memories with people that we really enjoyed? Did we have an awesome family experience? Did we go and do that cool thing did we go to the aquarium over the weekend when it was done and had all of our kids buy snow cones and hang out and go spend the day together? Like I don't remember the tournament wins that I had at all these places that I went to. I remember playing wiffle ball with my teammates in the hotel and getting yelled at by the cleaning staff 4 or 5 times before we finally went outside. I remember going to Disney World after after a tournament that I think we lost. I think we lost both of our games. Couldn't tell you, don't remember. But I remember going to Disney World with all of my buddies and going and running around. Like that's what makes this fun, and that's what makes people want to continue doing it. And that is what leads into a successful college experience. Some people are meant to do that for an additional 4 years. And that's great, and they're going to go do that. Some people aren't, or they're meant to do it in an intramural capacity or a club capacity or whatever it
Yeah.
might be. That's okay. Sports can still be great and are still great in those capacities. You just have to let that process kind of run the way it runs. And if you try to force your way into sort of an arbitrary idea of success within sports, it's going to go from being good to being not so good really fast. So families, sports just are, and you need to take a conscious effort to make them good in whatever way you're doing it.
That is incredible, awesome advice. And I really appreciate you sharing all that with us because, yeah, that's basically what this comes down to. And we need to remember that. So I appreciate you sharing that.
Absolutely. Thank you so much for letting me sit on my soapbox.
Well, Reid, you have been an incredible guest. Thank you for bringing all of your knowledge as an independent educational consultant and helping students and parents navigate this whole college athletic recruitment process. If you have more questions for Reid, you can contact him through the notes that I have in the show, or go to joina2a.com and hit up Reid and the rest of the staff at A2A Academy, and they'll be happy to help you out. So, Reid, I appreciate you for jumping on and chatting with me today.
Yeah, thank you for the time, Chuck. This was an absolute blast.
Well, everyone, thanks for listening to Don't Chuck It Up. If today's episode was helpful, be sure to subscribe and share it with the family navigating the college search and the application process. I'll be back next week with more tips and tricks. Until then, remember, don't chuck it up.